Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you guys are doing well. How are you guys? How have you guys been doing just with everything that's been going on? Please let me know. So today I'm gonna be doing a giant book haul. I went a little wild and I picked up 16 new books. Over the past few years, I've specifically loved reading, fiction or non-fiction books by Black writers that talk about identity, that talk about culture, that talk about Blackness. And growing up, I really loved literature, but I found that most of the books that I read, or most of the books that I was exposed to, had characters that didn't really look like me. It was so eye-opening when I discovered books by Black authors, books that have taught me about history, about culture, books that talk not only about our struggles but about just all aspects of Blackness, our joys, our highs, our lows, just all of it. So all of the books that I picked up have that common theme of Blackness, whether it was written by someone on the continent of Africa or someone here in the US or in the UK. So let me get started, and maybe hopefully you will find something that you want to read too. Okay, so the first book that I have is Homegoing by Yaa Gysasi, and this has to be one of my favorites, if not my favorite books that I have read. A friend actually lent me her copy and I traveled with it, so it got ruined. So I ended up buying her a new copy, but I wanted a new copy for myself, so that's why I just picked this up. So Homegoing follows the family lineage of two half-sisters. They grow up on two different villages in Ghana without any prior knowledge of the other. The first sister becomes the wife of the British governor of the Cape Coast Castle, which is a slave castle in Ghana, and the second sister actually is kept in that same castle as a slave before being sent to America. The book follows the two sisters and their descendants in a history of over 250 years, both in Ghana and in the United States. And this book, I feel, is so beautiful, so insightful, so tragic and empowering at the same time. And my favorite thing about this book is it deals with the long tension that can be found between Africans and African Americans, and whew, man, there is so much to say about this topic, and I will save that for another time. But at the end of the day, this book just highlights to me that we are all one. Truly, for the most part, we all started off in the same place, and some of us got to stay on that continent of Africa, and some of us were forced and taken against their will into a whole new continent, forced to literally build a nation on their backs with no choice and with no reparations to this day. So, whew, yeah. There's often a pride that comes with African culture. It really shouldn't be an us versus them, and I feel like there has to be a time that we come together as one and just have unity and understanding of each other and understanding of both cultures. Yeah, I think that's really important, but I'll save that conversation for another time. The next book is Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and this book is written as a letter to Ta-Nehisi's 14-year-old son on what it means to be Black in America, based on Ta-Nehisi's experiences. So I already have flipped through this book, and whew, yeah, I can tell this is gonna be a good one. It's also cool because Ta-Nehisi, he grew up in the DC metro area, DC, Maryland. I think it'll be cool getting to read, him talking about the place that I live in now. So yeah, there's that. Next up, we've got Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I loved Chimamanda's writing and storytelling in Americana, so I'm so excited to read this book. According to the blurb, Purple Hibiscus deals with a 15-year-old girl, Kambili, and her brother, who live a privileged life in Nigeria, and they attend a private missionary school. But their home life isn't as great as it might seem because their father just has, really heavy expectations for his wife and his kids. So things take a turn when Kambili and her brother visit their outspoken aunt, and for the first time in their lives, they're just outside of home and getting to experience just this new world. When they get home, they are changed by this newfound freedom, which causes tensions to escalate within their family, and I'm excited to find out what these tensions are. I feel like Chimamanda or just Nigerian authors often throw some big curveballs, so this tension can be anything, and it says that their mother commits a desperate act. So I'm very curious to read what this desperate act will be. And yeah, I'm excited because I really just like Chimamanda's work. I will say though that the one thing that I don't love too much, like just when I'm reading fiction in general, I don't love reading things that are super graphic, whether it's graphic violently or graphic sexually. So I feel like that ends up happening with a lot of fiction novels. So that's my only one qualm. I also picked up Woman, Race, and Class by Angela Davis, which just studies the intersectionality of these three themes of, you know, being a woman, of race, and class. And as much as I love fiction, I also really love reading just, you know, sociological works about these themes. So I think that this will be really good. I again already flipped through and I can tell that it's already talking about a lot of very interesting things. So I think that this will be an interesting as well as educational read. So next up, I have another book by Chimamanda, and this one is called The Thing Around Your Neck. And unlike Purple Hibiscus and unlike Americana, this is actually a collection of short stories. And let me read the back for you guys. It says, in these 12 dazzling stories, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, acclaimed author of Half of a Yellow Sun, explores the ties that bind men and women, parents and children, Africa and the United States. Searing and profound, suffused with beauty, sorrow, and longing, these stories map, with Adichie's signature emotional wisdom, the collision of two cultures and the deeply human struggle to reconcile them. Okay. Again, I really just love how Chimamanda touches on identity and her being a Nigerian woman. I think that this topic is obviously very close to her heart and her experience. It's something that I have struggled with a lot, so I really just love, I love reading about it from other people's perspectives. So yeah, there's that. Next, I picked up What It Means When a Man Falls from the Sky, and this is by Lesley, Nneka, Arimah, and this is also a collection of short stories. The author was born in the UK and grew up in Nigeria, so I could tell that the stories definitely, you know, are influenced by those experiences. And the back says that it deals with themes, you know, such as motherhood, parenthood, marriage, relationships, home, identity. So yeah, this should be another interesting read. So I also picked up On Beauty by Zadie Smith, and I remember in college I read a lot of essays by Zadie Smith, but I never actually read any of her books. But let me read what the blurb says for you guys. It says, just outside of Boston, in the small college town of Wellington, lives a family that is anything but typical. Liberated by education, complicated by race, and hobbled by self-delusion, they are about to stray onto the battleground that divides personal belief from political conviction. On Beauty is Zadie Smith's brilliant, hilarious send-up of the culture wars that define our age. Okay, I feel like this blurb doesn't tell me too much. I don't really know what exactly this book is going to touch on. I know it deals with a family and education and race, but yeah, I'm not getting too much from this, but I will definitely give it a shot. And I will say that I also really like the cover of this book. It just looks very pretty to me. So the next book that I have is Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and I actually read this book in high school. It was one of the only assigned readings that I had that had to do with Blackness. And I remember back then thinking that this book was very powerful and very just interesting and eye-opening. The narrator of this book is a nameless young black man in the United States in the 1940s, and the book journeys him moving from the Deep South, you know, the racist Deep South, over to Harlem, New York. Because of the climate that he's in during that time, he is essentially invisible, hence the title. So the book really just explores what it's like to be, you know, a black man in society, as well as what it's like to be, you know, socially invisible, where people look at you but they don't really see you. You don't really matter. So yeah, this book really delves into that, and I'm interested to see just how I will feel about it now 10 years later. I also picked up The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabel Wilkerson, and as you can see, this is a long one, but this book chronicles the decades-long migration of black citizens who fled from the South and moved to northern and western cities in the US just in search of a better life. To create this book, Isabel Wilkerson interviewed over 1,000 people, which I think is absolutely incredible. I can tell that this book is gonna be just so good. Just hearing all of the different stories, what people really went through just, you know, in search of a better life. And let me read a little excerpt for you guys. Let's see. She had them bow their heads. She whispered a prayer that her daughter and her daughter's family be protected on the long journey ahead in the Jim Crow car. May the Lord be the first one in the car, she prayed, and the last one out. When the time had come, Ida Mae and little James and Velma and all that they could carry were loaded into a brother-in-law's truck, and the three of them went to meet Ida Mae's husband at the train depot in Okolona for the night ride out of the Bottomland. The next book that I picked up is No Longer at Ease by Chinua Achebe, and Chinua Achebe is a very popular Nigerian author, and you might know him from the book Things Fall Apart. And that book deals very heavily with colonialism in Nigeria. And this book is actually the second book of the trilogy, so it's Things Fall Apart, No Longer at Ease, and Arrow of God or Arrows of God. Let me see. Arrow of God. However, the books do and can stand alone on their own. So this book follows the identity issues experienced by Obi Okonkwo, who is actually Obi Okonkwo. I beg, please don't come for me for these pronunciations. Yeah, but it deals with Obi Okonkwo, who is actually the grandson of the main character in the first book. Obi is a British educated man who is originally from Nigeria, and he struggles to just reconcile his traditional Igbo upbringing to the Western culture that he has been so much a part of through his education. Yeah, I'm really interested to read this, and again, I also really love the cover art for this book. I feel like all the books here just have really interesting covers. Next up, we've got We Need New Names, and this is by Nonviolet Bulawayo. This book centers around 10-year-old Darling who lives in Zimbabwe, and due to political unrest, her family ends up fleeing or moving over to the United States and living in the suburbs of the US. Here in the US, Darling grapples with assimilation and realizes that America might not be all that she had thought it would be. And what's interesting to me about this book is that it's written in the eyes of a 10-year-old. So I feel like that's just a totally different and new perspective, just seeing, you know, immigration through the eyes of a child. All of these other books, it's people that are, for the most part at least, you know, late teenagers, in their 20s, adults, young adults. So it'll be interesting to see how this story is told through the eyes of a 10-year-old. I also picked up Why We Can't Wait by Martin Luther King Jr. And I picked this book up because my pastor had actually mentioned it a couple times, just, you know, in the midst of all of the racial violence that we are seeing. So after he mentioned it, I wanted to pick it up, and I thought that it would be an interesting read. And let me read what it says that this one is about. In 1963, Birmingham, Alabama was perhaps the most racially segregated city in the United States. The campaign launched by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement on the segregated streets of Birmingham demonstrated to the world the power of nonviolent direct action. In this remarkable book, Dr. King recounts the story of Birmingham in vivid detail, tracing the history of the struggle for civil rights back to its beginning more than 3 centuries ago, and looking to the future, assessing the work to be done beyond Birmingham to bring about full equality for African Americans. And it's cool, there's like some pictures and things too, which is, yeah. Okay, this should be interesting. So I actually picked up another book by Chinua Achebe, and this one is called There Was a Country, and I'm actually so excited to read this book. I feel like I said that about all of them, but yeah, this one specifically I'm super intrigued to read. This book documents the history of the Nigerian Civil War, which is also known as the Biafran War, which took place from 1967 to 1970. And this book is actually also a memoir where Chinua Achebe talks about, you know, coming of age, growing into consciousness as a writer, and also just watching Nigeria being torn. And this cover too really stands out to me. You see this person on the ground and you see them carrying this weight, and on that weight it says corruption, ethnocentrism, human rights abuse, military coups, unemployment, black market economy, police harassment, NEPA, if you know, you know NEPA, yeah, this picture is very interesting to me. It's like this is Nigeria carrying just all of this weight. So yeah, I think this is gonna be a good one. The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson is a classic, and I just wanted a copy for myself. This book discusses how, you know, from the beginning of time, Black Americans have been miseducated in pretty much all arenas, from education to how to make a living to just overall self-image. This is just a really important and insightful read, so I'm happy to have a copy for myself. I also picked up The Souls of Black Folk by W.E.B. Du Bois, and this is also another classic and has been just really influential in the study of sociology and the study of race and class and just all of that. W.E.B. Du Bois is just known as just having a lot of interesting, intriguing theories on race. And this book was written in 1903, and in a series of essays he explores race. He talks about things such as double consciousness. So yeah, I'm happy to finally have a copy of this book. The last book that I picked up is Happiness Like Water by Chinua Oporanta, and this is actually another collection of short stories. I didn't realize that I picked up 3 books that were a collection of short stories by Nigerian authors. So this book has 10 different short stories that center around Nigerian women. I think that's really great that this book just highlights, you know, all these different and unique stories, because yeah, we're all different, all Nigerian women, all Black women, all Black men, all Black people. We are all different. We all have different stories, different interests, different experiences. I think that's super, super important. But yeah, that is the last book that I picked up, and those are all of the books that I picked up. I hope that you guys enjoyed this book haul, and I will leave all of the books down in the description in case you are looking for a new book to check out. And let me know if you guys read any of the books that I shared and what you guys thought about it. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your week, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
Oh, nah, nah. Oh, yeah, yeah.